The thing about motherhood is that you never really get to breathe. Not fully. Not without that ever present thread of worry looping through even the happiest moments. But that day, that worry became real. We were in the pediatrician's office, my 5-year-old daughter Olivia perched on the exam table, legs swinging nervously. I held her hand while the doctor spoke, slowly, gently, like someone delivering bad news wrapped in calm words. "We've looked at the scans," she said, "and it's clear. Olivia will need corrective surgery, sooner rather than later." I blinked. "Surgery?" I whispered, even though I'd heard the word, felt it. "Yes," she said. "It's non-emergency, but delaying it could affect her mobility long term." I nodded, but I couldn't hear the rest. Not really. My mind spiraled. Hospital rooms, recovery timelines, medical bills. I looked at Olivia, her wide eyes scanning my face, sensing my fear. "It's going to be okay," I told her, brushing hair from her cheek. "We'll take care of it." But my heart? My heart was pounding, because I knew what this meant. Money. The kind we didn't have casually sitting in savings. The kind that required rearranging everything, sacrificing everything. That night, I sat with my husband, Mark, and laid it out clearly. "We need to move fast. I'll talk to the insurance. You start looking at the savings." He nodded, face tight, jaw clenched. "Don't worry, I've got it handled." I wanted to believe him. For 12 years, I had believed him. He was the steady one, the provider. Always good with money, always calm when I panicked. But something was off in his voice that night, something cold. And when I checked our joint savings account the next morning, the money was gone, all of it. Gone. No notes, no alerts, no conversation, just zero. I stared at the screen, my throat closing, stomach flipping. I called him. No answer. Texted. No reply. By the time he walked through the door that night, smiling like nothing was wrong, I was already shaking. "Mark," I said, "where's the surgery money?" And he just sighed, rubbed the back of his neck like I was the problem. "I gave it to my mom," he said. "She needed a break. She's going on that cruise next week." I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I just stood there, frozen as everything I thought I knew disappeared. I thought I'd misheard him. Standing in the middle of our kitchen, the same place we'd planned birthday parties, baked cupcakes, and stood swaying with a feverish Olivia pressed to our chests, now a war zone I never saw coming. I repeated it, just to be sure. "You gave the money, our daughter's surgery money, to your mother?" Mark didn't even flinch. "She's been depressed," he said. "She needed to get away. That cruise was already discounted, and her friends were going. She's been through a lot lately." I blinked. "She's been through a lot?" His voice was sharp now, defensive. "You wouldn't understand. She sacrificed everything for me growing up. I owed her this." I could barely breathe. "And Olivia?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from cracking. "What do we owe her?" He rolled his eyes like I was being dramatic. "She'll be fine. The doctor said it wasn't emergency surgery." I felt the heat rise to my face, my ears ringing. "She said delaying it could cause long-term damage, Mark. We had the money. You didn't even ask me." He raised his hands, annoyed. "I didn't think you'd understand. You've always had a thing about my mom." A thing? Yes, I had a thing. I had a thing about a woman who talked down to me at every dinner, called me overbearing when I advocated for Olivia, and once told me I should stop spoiling her with attention. I had a thing about the woman who smiled sweetly at me in public and whispered venom into Mark's ear every chance she got. But this was beyond. This was betrayal dressed as family loyalty. I turned away before I did something I'd regret. Walked into the hallway, stared at Olivia's framed drawings on the wall. Crayon hearts, stick figures, smiling suns. She had no idea that the man who carried her to bed every night just decided her health was optional. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table long after Mark went to bed, trying to make the numbers work. I called the insurance, got the paperwork, did the math. We were out of options. And Mark? He snored peacefully upstairs like he hadn't just stolen our child's future. I knew then something had broken, not just in our marriage, in me. Because I wasn't going to protect him anymore, and if karma didn't show up for him soon, I was ready to become it myself. 3 days later, while I was on hold with the hospital's billing office, Olivia coloring quietly beside me on the living room floor, I made the mistake of opening Facebook. And there she was, Mark's mother, lounging in a beach chair on the upper deck of a cruise ship, sunglasses tilted, fruity drink in hand, and the caption, "A much-needed escape. Bon voyage, world." Deserved? Yah blessed. My breath caught in my throat. I scrolled down. Another post, her and 3 women, all in matching mommy's timeout shirts, cocktails raised like a victory salute. I stared at the screen like it might apologize, but it didn't. The likes were rolling in. "You go, girl. You've earned this. So happy for you." I couldn't look away, because while she sipped pina coladas, my daughter needed surgery. While she smiled for selfies, I was trying to figure out how to borrow money we didn't have, from people who didn't have it either. I set the phone down before I threw it across the room. "Mommy?" Olivia asked softly, holding up a crooked rainbow she'd just finished. "Is my leg gonna hurt forever?" I knelt beside her, kissed the top of her head. "No, baby, I promise we're going to fix it." But inside, I was shaking because I didn't know how I was going to keep that promise. That night, Mark came home late, again, said he had to work late but smelled like beer and cologne that wasn't mine. He kissed Olivia's forehead and walked right past me like we were roommates, not partners. I watched him from the doorway. He had no guilt, no shame. It hit me then. This man wasn't just a bad husband, he wasn't a father anymore either. Not the kind that protects, not the kind that sacrifices. He was a man who chose his mother over his daughter. And in doing so, he gave me permission to stop choosing him. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way I had been. I was focused, because I knew something he didn't. Cruises end, drinks run dry. And karma? Karma doesn't need directions. It already knew his name. The next morning, I went looking. Not for proof, not for revenge, but for truth. Something I could hold. Something I could show to anyone who dared defend what Mark had done. Because while he gaslit me with lines like, "You're overreacting," or "It's just money, Claire," I knew there had to be a trail. And I was going to find it. I waited until he left for work, said he had an early client meeting. I smiled and kissed Olivia goodbye before dropping her at school, then drove straight home and headed for his office. Mark had always been careful, but not clever. His ego blinded him. He never thought I'd look. The drawer was locked. Of course it was. But his key ring? Always hanging by the back door. I opened it with a click that felt louder than it should have been. Inside, files, envelopes, receipts. And in the back, a manila folder labeled MOMCRUISE. I opened it. There it was. Cruise payment confirmation, $4,300 upgraded suite, $600, spa deposit, $300, prepaid excursion package, $1,100, shopping voucher gift cards, $500, a handwritten note on a hotel notepad. "She deserves this. Claire will get over it." I read that line 3 times. Claire will get over it, as if I were the problem. As if I was a speed bump on his path to making his mother feel like a queen while our daughter waited on medical approval to walk pain-free again. I didn't cry, not this time. I photocopied everything, every receipt, every note. Then I placed it all back exactly how I found it. I had what I needed. Later that afternoon, I took Olivia to her pre-op consultation. I didn't tell her the money was gone. I didn't tell her her father had picked sea views over her stability. I just smiled, held her hand, because she would get that surgery, with or without Mark. And as I watched her limp across the waiting room, I knew one thing for certain. He didn't deserve either of us. But the truth was about to make sure everyone else knew it too. I didn't want to be vindictive. I wasn't trying to ruin him. But I wasn't going to protect a man who played husband and father until it got inconvenient. I wasn't going to let him wear respectability like a mask while I scrambled behind closed doors to clean up the wreckage. So I made an appointment with someone who did care about appearances, Mark's boss, Henry Caldwell. A man who believed in family values, who posted inspirational quotes about integrity and hard work on LinkedIn every week. A man who had just given Mark a raise and praised him as reliable under pressure. I arrived at the law office that Friday morning in a blazer and jeans, no makeup, no drama, just that manila folder in my hands. His assistant hesitated when I said I wasn't a client. I just need 10 minutes of Mr. Caldwell's time, I said. I promise I won't waste it. She must have seen something in my eyes. She let me through. Henry Caldwell looked surprised to see me. He stood. Claire, everything okay? I sat across from him and placed the folder on his desk. Number. But I'm here to make sure you're informed. He didn't speak as he opened it, just began reading, line by line, charge by charge. Then he saw the note. She deserves this. Claire will get over it. His mouth pressed into a thin line. I'm not here to tell you how to run your company, I said. But you should know that while Mark was cashing his bonus check, he used our daughter's surgery fund to send his mother on a luxury cruise. His jaw tensed. I had no idea, he said finally. I figured. I stood, buttoned my blazer. I don't need you to do anything. Just maybe think twice before praising his character in public. He nodded slowly. Thank you for bringing this to me. I walked out without looking back. Because it wasn't about destroying him. It was about making sure the illusion cracked where it mattered. Mark wanted to act like this was all invisible, like I'd absorbed the damage. Not anymore. I was done holding his lies together in private while he kept pretending to be a man of honor. Mark walked in around 7 p.m., whistling. That's what hit me hardest. The whistling. Like he wasn't the man who emptied our daughter's surgery fund. Like he hadn't just handed his mother a 5-star vacation while I held Olivia's hand through pain she didn't understand. He dropped his keys on the counter, kissed the top of my head without looking. I'm starving, he said. Did you make anything? I looked up from the dining room table where Olivia and I were finishing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Again. No, I said. Not hungry. He poured himself a drink. You good? I didn't answer. Just waited. I knew it was coming. His phone buzzed. He checked the screen, then stopped. Claire, he said, tone shifting. Why did Henry call me into a meeting this afternoon? I shrugged. You'll have to ask Henry. He stared at me. You went to my job? I went to someone who still believes in accountability, I said. He scoffed, setting down his glass harder than necessary. Are you serious? You just blew up my career because I used some savings for my mom? No, I said, standing. I blew up the lie that you were the kind of man people should trust. You had to make this public? Olivia's surgery was never private. Her pain was never optional. But you made your choices in silence, so I made mine with volume. He paced, furious. You think you're going to come out of this looking like some hero? I don't care how I look, I said. I care that my daughter gets the care she needs and that the world stops treating you like a victim in a story where you're the villain. He threw his hands up. You're impossible. No, Mark, I'm done. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time and didn't like what he saw. I didn't flinch. Because the version of me who would have begged him to understand, who would have twisted herself into forgiveness. She left the moment he said, she needed it more than we did. And the woman who stood in her place was just getting started. The audacity would have been laughable if it hadn't made me nauseous. It was Sunday morning. I was helping Olivia finish her breakfast, her little legs swinging from the kitchen chair, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered out of instinct. And there she was. Claire, she said brightly, like she was calling from just across town and not halfway through a luxury cruise bought with my child's health. It's me, Lorraine, Mark's mom. I didn't say a word. She continued, her voice syrupy with the sound of waves and champagne in the background. I just wanted to call and clear up any confusion. Mark told me you were upset about the cruise money. I had no idea it was for something medical. He said it was discretionary, fun money. Fun.money. I walked into the hallway, away from Olivia. Lorraine, I said calmly. The money was in a clearly labeled fund titled Olivia Surgery. She went quiet. Don't play innocent. You're not. You've always believed your comfort matters more than anyone else's reality. Oh, don't be dramatic, she huffed. It's not like it was a life or death situation. No, I said, voice flat. Just her ability to walk pain-free, to grow up without a limp. But you're right. How could that compare to the buffet on deck 5? She scoffed. I thought you were more mature than this. You always had a temper. No, I said. What I had was restraint. Until now. She shifted tones. Look, let's not make this bigger than it is. The money's gone. What do you want me to do? Swim back? I smiled, cold and clear. No, Lorraine, I want you to enjoy your spa treatments, because when you get off that ship, you'll return to a son who's been benched at work, a daughter-in-law who no longer pretends, and a granddaughter who doesn't ask about you anymore. Silence. I suggest you extend your vacation, I added. There's not much here waiting for you. And then I hung up. Not out of rage, out of closure. Because when someone shows you, again and again, that they'll never care about your child, you don't keep explaining. You cut the call and never answer again. After that phone call, something clicked. I stopped waiting. Waiting for him to feel guilty. Waiting for her to come back and grovel. Waiting for the universe to fix what Mark had so carelessly broken. I'd waited long enough. So I opened my laptop, poured myself a coffee, and started planning without him. I researched local nonprofits that offered emergency medical grants for children. I contacted two. Both responded the same day. I set up a GoFundMe, not because I wanted pity, but because I wanted solutions. I titled it, Help Olivia Walk Without Pain, and I told the truth, every word. I didn't include his name, didn't need to. The story told itself. By the next morning, I had $2,000 in donations and 3 messages from strangers who said they'd been through the same thing. Different faces, same betrayal. Women who were told, wait, calm down, it's not that serious. I joined a local support group for parents dealing with complex medical costs. I spoke at the first meeting. My voice didn't shake. Because this wasn't shame. This was motion. And with every form I filled, every call I made, every signature on Olivia's surgery paperwork, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. Mark noticed. Of course he did. He started asking questions. What's this paperwork? What's this email about a fundraiser? Are you seriously asking strangers for help? I looked at him and said, yes, because the person I married isn't helping anymore. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Good. Because the woman standing in front of him now wasn't waiting for him to grow up. She wasn't begging. She wasn't frozen. She was moving forward, with her daughter, her voice, and her plan. And he could either watch her go or get run over by the truth he thought he could silence. I didn't expect it to spread. I didn't expect the comments, the shares, the strangers reaching out with kindness I hadn't felt in years. Not from family, not from Mark, not from anyone in our circle who called themselves supportive. But 3 days after I posted Olivia's story, it started gaining traction. First, a local moms group picked it up. Then someone reposted it to a healthcare advocacy forum. A teacher from Olivia's old preschool donated and left a note that made me cry. She was always the brightest light in class. Let's get her dancing again. And then a reporter from our local news station emailed me, would you be open to sharing more? Your story is resonating with families everywhere. I stared at that message for a long time. Was I really ready to tell the world? Then I thought about Olivia, her brave little smile, the way she limped but never complained, the way she asked, do you think I'll be able to run at recess next year? So I said yes. The segment aired on a Thursday evening. They interviewed me and Olivia in our backyard. She wore her favorite pink headband and showed them the picture she drew of herself after the surgery, running with sparkles behind her like a superhero. I didn't name names, but I didn't lie either. I said, when the money we set aside disappeared, I realized I couldn't wait on anyone else to fix it. I had to fight. For her. For our future. Within hours, the fundraiser crossed $12,000. Mark came home in a rage. You humiliated me. I looked at him, calm, unmoved. No, I said. You humiliated yourself. I just stopped covering for you. He paced the kitchen, red-faced. My coworkers saw it. My boss saw it. I nodded. Good, maybe they'll finally understand the kind of man they're promoting. He slammed a cupboard, grabbed his keys, and left. And when the door closed, I didn't cry. I smiled. Because that night, while he ran from a storm he created, Olivia and I sat on the couch, eating popcorn and watching cartoons. And I knew we were already on the other side. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Olivia was napping after a long morning at physical therapy, her first real session thanks to the donations that had kept pouring in. Her therapists were amazed at her resilience. I wasn't. I'd seen it in her since the day she was born. That afternoon, Mark came home early. For once, he didn't storm in or slam anything. He walked in like a man who had run out of excuses to outrun. He went upstairs without a word. 15 minutes later, I heard the zipper. I found him in our bedroom, stuffing clothes into a duffel bag. Wrinkled shirts, tangled socks. No intention behind it, just noise disguised as purpose. He looked up when I stepped into the room. "I'm leaving." I crossed my arms. "Where?" He didn't answer, just shrugged like that made it noble. "You don't want to fight?" he asked, sounding almost surprised. "No," I said. "I'm not interested in fighting someone who already surrendered his character." He zipped the bag and slung it over his shoulder. "You made me the villain." I didn't blink. "You are the villain, Mark. You chose that the moment you picked cruise tickets over Olivia's care." His face twisted. "This doesn't have to be ugly." I stepped aside, nodding toward the door. "It doesn't. Which is why I already filed." He stopped cold. "Filed?" "For divorce, for full custody, for the house, for everything that still works, everything you don't." He dropped the bag on the bed. "You're serious?" "As a heart attack, as a mother, as a woman who finally stopped mistaking your mediocrity for love." He stared at me, stunned. Maybe for the first time realizing that the woman who used to cry into the bathroom sink now spoke with a calm he couldn't rattle. "I'll fight it," he said finally, weakly. "You won't win," I replied. He didn't speak after that, just picked up his bag and walked past me. Down the stairs, out the door, no apology, no goodbye to Olivia, just the sound of someone finally walking out of a life they were never strong enough to be part of. And me? I exhaled because it wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about protecting peace. And for the first time in forever, I had it. The call came on a rainy Wednesday morning, the kind where everything feels slower, heavier, but still full of potential. I was folding laundry when my phone rang. "Hi, this is Megan from the pediatric surgery office. I wanted to let you know Olivia's procedure has been approved. Your funding came through. We're locking in a date for next week." I froze, not in panic, in relief. I thanked her 3 times, maybe more. Hung up, then just stood in the kitchen holding a dish towel like it had transformed into something sacred. It was really happening. Olivia was going to get what she needed. I called her into the kitchen. She came hopping in, her uneven gait so familiar, so heartbreakingly normal now. "Guess what?" I said. She tilted her head, already smiling. "What?" "You're getting your surgery next week, baby." Her eyes widened. "Really? For real?" I nodded and she ran straight into my arms, holding on tight. We cried, both of us, but not sad tears. The kind of tears that come after you've been holding your breath too long and someone finally says, "It's okay to exhale." We baked cookies that afternoon. She picked the shape, hearts. Mark didn't call, didn't text, didn't ask how she was doing. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. This was his daughter, his blood. And yet, when it came time to show up, really show up, he was always just gone. I didn't call to tell him about the surgery date, not out of spite, out of acceptance. Because you can't keep extending invitations to people who treat your milestones like background noise. That night, Olivia fell asleep early, curled up next to me on the couch. I stayed awake, not out of worry, out of peace. Because for once, the next chapter didn't include chaos. It included recovery, healing, and 2 feet walking evenly toward a life where the people who showed up actually stayed. We were brushing teeth, Olivia perched on the edge of the bathroom counter in her soft pajamas, the ones with the dancing stars. Her eyes were sleepy but nervous, her little fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. And then she asked it. So softly, I almost missed it. "Do you think Daddy will come tomorrow?" I froze, toothbrush in hand. It was the first time she'd said his name in weeks. I kneeled in front of her and looked into her big, hopeful eyes, the ones that didn't yet know how to guard themselves from disappointment. "Honey," I said gently, "I don't think he's coming." She looked down at her lap. But it's a big thing, right? It is, I nodded. But sometimes grown-ups make choices that don't make sense, and they don't show up when they should. She didn't cry. She just nodded, lips pressed together like she was trying to be braver than 5 years old ever should have to be. I pulled her close, wrapping her up in my arms. You know who's going to be there? I whispered into her hair. Me. Every single minute. I'm not going anywhere. She nodded against my chest. I didn't tell her about the envelope I had ready, one that contained every signed consent form, insurance approval, and donation summary. I didn't tell her how long I'd sat at the kitchen table perfecting the medical binder for the surgeon's team. I didn't tell her how I'd practiced breathing exercises in the dark so I wouldn't fall apart in front of her. I didn't tell her that I'd also packed a copy of the custody papers, just in case. Because part of loving someone is protecting them from things they aren't old enough to carry. She fell asleep in my bed that night, holding my hand like an anchor. I lay awake beside her, watching the moonlight move across the wall. I didn't need him. She didn't need him. We had us, and that would always, always be enough. The hospital was cold, even under the blankets they gave us. We arrived just after sunrise. Olivia clutched her stuffed giraffe with both hands, wearing the pink fuzzy socks I'd packed in her overnight bag. Her name was printed on a plastic bracelet that was suddenly much too big for such a small wrist. I checked us in, smiled at the nurse, answered all the pre-op questions, repeated her allergies, gave her date of birth, nodded when they asked, "Any updates to guardianship?" "No," I said. "Just me." They led us to the prep area. I changed into the sterile gown and cap they gave me. Olivia sat on the bed, legs swinging again, trying to be brave. Her voice was quiet. She asked things like, "Will I wake up soon?" And "Will I still like macaroni after this?" I told her yes, to everything. Inside I was shaking, but outside, I was made of stone. The anesthesiologist came in, the surgeon followed. I signed the final forms, then came the moment, when they wheeled her away. "Mommy," she whispered, right before the nurse pushed the bed through the door. "I'm right here, baby," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." She held up her giraffe for me to see, as if to say, "Don't forget who I am." And then the door closed, and I was left standing in the hallway, alone. I made it to the waiting room before my knees buckled, but I didn't cry. Not fully. Instead, I pulled the binder from my bag and reviewed everything again, just to give my hands something to do. I texted the nurse hotline twice. I checked the time every 90 seconds. I breathed in counts of 4, out in counts of 6. Other parents were there, couples, siblings, one woman in a blazer who hadn't stopped pacing. I sat silently, and I held space, not just for her, but for me. Because that morning, I didn't have a hand to hold. No partner to whisper, "She's strong, just like her mom." No one to lean on but my own spine. And I realized that was enough, because strength isn't loud. Sometimes strength is just a mother in a blue plastic chair refusing to fall apart while her baby fights forward on a table she can't see. I had been watching the clock like it owed me something. 3 hours. 4, then 4.5. Each minute felt like a test of how long a mother could hold her breath and pretend her heart wasn't trying to claw its way out of her chest. Finally, the surgeon walked in. She wore her scrubs and cap, but her eyes? They told the truth. Red-rimmed, glassy. Not from fatigue, from feeling. My legs moved before my brain did. "Is she—" "She's okay," she said quickly, reaching out to touch my arm. "She's okay." I sat back down before I collapsed. She knelt in front of me, not standing above, not clinical, human. "The surgery went better than expected," she said. "We were able to correct the rotation completely. She'll need physical therapy, but her long-term outcome looks excellent." I exhaled, the first full breath I'd taken all day. "She was so brave," the surgeon added. "She asked if you were watching from the hallway." That broke me. The tears came then, fast and hot and silent. I covered my mouth with my hand and nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. "She's waking up now. You'll be able to see her in just a few minutes." I thanked her, probably too many times. She just smiled and squeezed my shoulder before walking away. In that moment, the weight of everything, the surgery, the fear, The months of scrambling for funding, the betrayal, the abandonment, all of it lifted, if only a little. She was okay. We were okay. When the nurse finally led me back, Olivia was still groggy, a little pale, but smiling when she saw me. "Hi, Mommy," she whispered. I kissed her forehead. "You did amazing," I said, sitting at her bedside. "You're my hero." She reached out with her tiny hand and gripped my fingers, weak but steady. And I knew, deep in my bones, that this moment, this quiet hospital room filled with beeping monitors and second chances, was the beginning of something new. Not a recovery, a rebirth. For both of us. I was sitting beside Olivia's bed, holding her hand while she slept, when I saw the familiar figure outside the glass window of her room. Mark. In jeans and a wrinkled button-down, holding a bouquet of flowers he clearly picked up at the hospital gift shop. Not even wrapped. Just shoved into a plastic sleeve like an afterthought. For a second, I just stared at him. Then I stood up, slowly, quietly. I walked out into the hallway, closing the door gently behind me. He straightened when he saw me, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I heard she made it through," he said. "She did," I replied. He glanced toward the door. "Can I see her?" I stepped between him and the window. "No?" His brow furrowed. "Claire, I'm her father." "You're the man who chose a cruise over her surgery." His face flushed. "I didn't think it was this serious." "You didn't think, Mark. Period. You knew. And you chose your mother's comfort over our daughter's pain." "I've been busy. Work's been—" "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to say that. You didn't call. You didn't ask. You didn't show up for pre-op, didn't offer to help with the paperwork, didn't ask how I was managing it alone." He looked down. "I didn't know how to fix it." "It's not your job to fix it now," I said. "It's your job to live with what you broke." He glanced back toward the room again. "She'd want to see me." "She wanted you at the consultation, at the fundraiser, at bedtime when she asked if you'd come. You weren't there." He swallowed hard, holding out the flowers. "Just give her these." I took them, then dropped them gently into the trash can beside me. He stared in disbelief. "Goodbye, Mark." He didn't argue. He just turned and walked down the hall, slower than he came, like he'd finally realized what being left out really felt like. And I turned back toward Olivia's room, toward the only direction that mattered. Because some doors don't need to be slammed. They just need to stay closed. 2 weeks after Olivia's surgery, a thick envelope arrived on my doorstep. It was quiet in the house. Olivia was napping after her therapy session, her little body still adjusting, still healing. But her spirit? Unbreakable. I sat at the kitchen table, the same place where Mark once told me he'd handle everything, and opened the envelope. Inside, the finalized divorce paperwork. Everything we'd discussed through lawyers over the past few weeks. Division of property, full custody, no contest. It was all there, ready. No drama, no scribbled notes in the margins, no guilt-tripping messages. Just signatures, his and now mine. I read every page slowly, not out of doubt, but to mark the moment. To witness the closing of a chapter I never thought would end this way. When I reached the final page, I didn't pause. I didn't cry. I picked up my pen and signed my name cleanly. Clearly, Claire Taylor. No longer his anything. It didn't feel like a loss. It felt like reclaiming a space that had always belonged to me. I slipped the papers back into the envelope and sealed it with a quiet kind of satisfaction. Not spite, not revenge. Freedom. Later that afternoon, I took Olivia for a walk. Just the two of us. She was still a little wobbly, holding my hand tightly, but she moved with more confidence than I'd seen in months. We passed the park. She looked up and asked, "Can I try the swings?" And I nodded. I pushed her gently, then harder as she started giggling. Her laugh echoed through the air like music, the kind of laugh that's impossible to fake. And while she soared higher, I stood behind her, steady and still. No longer afraid, no longer alone, no longer married to a man who couldn't stand beside us when it mattered most. The papers were signed, the line had been drawn, and everything ahead of us? It finally felt wide open. It was a warm Saturday morning. The kind where everything feels just a little bit lighter, like even the sun knows something good is about to happen. Olivia had just finished her 3rd week of physical therapy. She was stronger, her balance was improving. Her smile was different now, deeper, more certain, like she knew her body could finally do what her heart had always wanted it to. We were in the backyard, a place that had held so many versions of us: birthdays, scraped knees, moments of stillness after storms. She was holding my hands, her feet planted firmly on the grass, and then she said, "Let go, Mommy." I blinked. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Just for a little." I let go slowly, inch by inch, watching her face for fear. But there wasn't any. Just fire. She took one step, then another, then two more. She stumbled on the fourth, but caught herself. And then she laughed. Not just a giggle, a full-body victorious laugh. The kind that makes the air shift. The kind that breaks something open inside you. I dropped to my knees and pulled her into my arms. "You did it," I whispered. She pulled back and said, "I knew I could." Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not then. I didn't want her to see grief where there was only glory. Because in that moment, I wasn't thinking about what it cost. I wasn't thinking about Mark, or Lorraine, or cruises, or signatures, or lies. I was thinking about this. About every single person who said, "Just wait." Every sleepless night I spent trying to add zeros I didn't have. Every, "Mommy, will it hurt forever?" Gone. This was the moment we were fighting for. Not revenge, not exposure. This. Olivia's feet, moving freely, her body, unburdened. Her joy, untouched by what it took to get here. That night she told me, "I'm going to run tomorrow," and I said, "You will." Because I wasn't afraid anymore, and neither was she. The past was behind us. And the future? She was already running toward it. It came in a pale pink envelope addressed in shaky handwriting I recognized instantly. Lorraine. I almost didn't open it. Part of me thought about dropping it straight into the trash, right next to the coupons and credit card offers. But I didn't. I took it inside, set it on the counter, made tea. Let it sit there for an hour like it might change its contents if I gave it time. It didn't. When I finally opened it, the letter inside was short. 2 pages. Careful cursive. Not dramatic, not defensive. Just pitiful. "Claire, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, and I understand why. I didn't realize the full situation. I didn't know Mark had lied about the money. He told me you had other funding, that Olivia was already scheduled. I should have asked more questions. I should have known better. I saw the news story. I saw her smiling, walking. She looked strong. Like you. I'm sorry for what I said, for what I didn't say, and for what I took. I've mailed you a check. It's not enough, but it's what I can do. Please use it for her future. Or yours. I won't call again. Lorraine." I set the letter down and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I didn't cry. I didn't forgive her, not fully. But I heard her. And that mattered more than I expected. Later, I opened the small envelope tucked inside. A check, just like she said. I smiled, not at the amount, but at the shift. Not in her, in me. Because this wasn't about settling scores. It wasn't about her guilt or my power. It was about finally being on the side of the story where apologies show up late, and I no longer need them to move forward. I folded the check into a folder labeled Olivia's Fund and tucked it away. Not because I trusted her, but because her guilt now worked in service of our healing. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Sterile. Quiet. Just whispers, shuffling papers, and the occasional tapping of a judge's pen against wood. Mark sat across from me. Same tie he wore to our engagement photos. Different eyes. He looked at me like he still expected me to blink first. But I didn't. This wasn't a movie. There were no dramatic outbursts. Just the slow legal unraveling of what was left of us. The judge called my name, asked if I had anything to say regarding custody. I stood, hands steady, voice clear. "Yes, Your Honor, I do." And I told the truth. I told them how I'd covered medical bills alone, how I'd navigated months of therapy appointments, insurance calls, school transitions, while he prioritized vacations and silence. I told them about the missed check-ins, the missed surgery, the missing presents. But I also told them about Olivia, about her courage, her smile, her steps, how she deserved a home where love wasn't conditional and care wasn't optional. I didn't speak with venom. I spoke with proof. And when I finished, I didn't look at him. I looked at the judge. Because this wasn't between Mark and me anymore. It was about her. The gavel hit the desk. Final ruling. Full legal and physical custody awarded to me. Supervised visitation only. Financial support required. Mark didn't speak, didn't argue, because in that room, for the first time, the law caught up to the truth. And I exhaled, took Olivia's photo out of my wallet, pressed it to my chest. This was the justice I didn't have to fight dirty for. This was earned. And outside, as I stepped into the sun and held the paperwork in my hands, I whispered, "We did it, baby. We're free." It had been 6 months since the surgery, 3 since the court ruling, 100 quiet mornings, each one softer than the last. Olivia was thriving. She ran now, not just walked. She chased birds at the park, danced in grocery store aisles, climbed the stairs 2 at a time and shouted, "Mommy, look at me." And every time I looked at her, I saw it. Freedom, not just hers, ours. We had a new apartment. Nothing fancy, but filled with warmth. Plants in the window, paintings on the fridge. A door that only opened to people who deserved to walk through it. Mark never came back. Not really. He saw her twice during supervised visits, sat stiffly, offered store-bought gifts he never bothered to wrap. She was polite, quiet, disconnected. I didn't interfere. She would come to her own conclusions. But me? I'd already come to mine. One Sunday, as Olivia napped on the couch with her giraffe tucked under her arm, I sat with a cup of tea and opened my journal. The first page had once been filled with fear. The last one? Peace. I wrote, "We lost so much. Time, trust, the illusion of partnership. But we found more. Strength, clarity, laughter that returns like a song you never stopped loving. She walks without pain. I live without apology. And that man who once held the keys to our home now holds nothing but the memory of the life he abandoned." I closed the journal, slipped it onto the shelf, and picked up the latest drawing Olivia made, her and me, holding hands under a giant sun. She had written one word across the top in crooked crayon letters. Safe. And that was it. The victory. The closure. The redemption. Not a courtroom. Not a fight. Just one little girl finally walking toward everything a good mother made possible with nothing but truth, grit, and love.